So again, because I'm interested in your uh, ability to, if you like, embrace the enchantment, and also, you look then, and when you write about education and you write about your own education, but I recognize a lot of what you're saying, how we have this ability to, if you like, invent our enchantments, that we will imagine these imagined worlds, and we continue to do them through friendships and play. I mean, and play seems as a catch-all phrase, but it seems as though the play, the kind of enchantments of play, have a freedom that the cultures that seem enchanted, that are enchanted, they're not playful. And I'm wondering whether that's something that concerned the Gellner thing, that he could go perhaps with, well, I suppose I'm reflecting my own thoughts around this, because I've been thinking a lot about what you've been throwing at me. As a, obviously not a grand intellectual, but I guess I am enculturated into this kind of rationality that you talk about, more perhaps than I thought it was. But I'm thinking about it. I do like to play, and the thing that I don't like are people telling me you can't play that, you can't say that, you can't do that, for not because of any grand epistemology or metaphysics. I just like the freedom to play. If I want to play, I want to play. And I'm wondering whether that actually is a bigger strand to why Gellner was so opposed to these these alternative societies. That yes, they're enchanted, like the Buddhist is enchanted, but they're not playful about it, or they don't seem to be. They in a way, you're locked into a rather dogmatic way of yin and yang, or whatever. You can't do anything about it, and you're not. And actually, it erodes a kind of freedom, which is to say, no, I don't want to do that anymore. I want to be dogmatic at this point. I don't want to be dogmatic here. I want to be, whereas, and I guess in the totalitarian mindset that he was facing in the Cold War, he kind of was, and then saw this in the re-enchantment industry, the various manifestations, postmodernism, stuff like that. What he was really rebelling against there was this notion that he just wanted to play, and he wasn't going to be told that he couldn't play because it offended a religion, or it offended, kind of a group.
Well, it's certainly true that Ernest was really enjoyed play. I mean, just to take two examples. One is he missed out on a number of top jobs. I remember he was going to be the head of an Oxford college or something. They were interviewing him, and then he made some joke, playful joke, which didn't go down well. And so later on, he told me, Alan, in serious situations, don't make jokes. You never know. Another example is, I can't remember if I told you, is that when he came just on one occasion to Canoe on the Cam, before he came as a professor, I think, with his daughter, they came and they brought their canoe and a tent, and we had a house near Cambridge with a big lawn, and he said, I'm going to camp, I'm not going to bother you. Anyway, they arrived and it was pouring with rain and so on, and we had a spare bedroom or two. And I said to Ernest, why don't you come and stay in the bedroom? And his daughter said, yes, please. And but he said, no, I'm going to. And so he put up his tent in the pouring rain in the garden and slept in it. But he spent the evening watching football with us, because he was a very avid football supporter. He loved watching football and the immersion into the play. He was also a keen chess player, as you know, quite a keen chess player. So he really loved spontaneity. That is one of the features of play, that its central feature is that you have rules, but within them you have freedom. So it gives you freedom within rules. And so he cherished that. And I think I wouldn't call Mahayana Buddhism dogmatic, but you are right that it's not particularly playful. And this was one of the things I noticed about the gurungs when I studied them, and I asked them, what games do you play? And they did take up increasingly volleyball, because there wasn't, you had to have a small court because it was on the top of mountains, and they loved that. But when I first went there, they weren't playing that. The only game they had wasn't really a game in the modern sense. It was throwing a stone. So you run along and then you throw the stone. Now it's a sport rather than a game. There's no, games have this spontaneity. There's nothing spontaneous in it. It's just a test of strength. So many, I define the difference between games and sport as games being with other people and sport being against nature, swimming and climbing and things like that. So sports are much less spontaneous. Mountain climbing or skiing or sports like that, there is a spontaneity in the skills. The craft allows you some spontaneity, but because there's no interpersonal interactions in sports on the whole. In running you can't really have much spontaneity. So he loved games. Now, when I asked about the games among the Gurungs, no. And when you look at Japanese and Chinese civilization, one of the things I did notice early on, they don't really have games. They always claim, for example, the Chinese claim that they invented football because they had a sort of thing where they kicked something around. You can see early representations of that. And they had obviously a number of sports, horse riding, archery, all the martial arts. But the martial arts tend to be, I suppose, judo and sumo and things like that. But they're not the sort of what is quintessential about the English games is that they tend to be team games. So the English invented cricket and football and things like this. So on the whole, games playing seems to go with a disenchanted world, because even Europe, if you look at the contribution, tennis, maybe French, but on the whole, the English are the great games playing. And I think that this, it's much wider. Basically, the English create associational spaces where they can interact with each other in a meaningful, maybe temporary way in clubs and games and so on, because their life is not filled with these other things which you have in China or in Japan, which is rituals, family, and so on. So your life is mapped out and there is no real space. You have lots of competitions, you have poetry competitions, you have wine drinking competitions, you have tea ceremonies, all those sorts of things, but they're not games, they're not spontaneous in the same way. So it seems to be a feature, and it's interesting that as countries become more westernized, as India became westernized, it took up and is obsessed with team games, cricket. In China, Korea, and these countries now, football is expanding very fast, and as is our other team games. So it gives you a non-utilitarian activity which joins you with other people in a meaningful period of integration through competition, which is, while it lasts, totally absorbing. We were delighted yesterday to go, we heard the sound of baton ball in our local green just next to our house, and we watched the first game of cricket. And we both found it very therapeutic because it somehow is quintessentially English, and it's come back after COVID. And watching those cricketers, they are totally absorbed when they put on their whites and go out and so on. if you said, is cricket true? Let's say that you can't apply truth and falsehood. Is cricket real? They'd say, yes, but we know we are playing a game. And that is the element of the game. You know you're playing it, and that's why children play games. They know that it's a game, but they also know that it's totally involving. And you don't have much of that in enchanted countries. If it's very enchanted, there is no space or need for those kinds of
Mm.
playing. And likewise, I mean, the other kind of, I divide the kinds of constructions of enchantment in the West into play and arts. So all the arts like poetry and drama and literature and music and all those things. When you are, music is a very good example. I mean, Plato hated music and he hated poetry because for the same reason as Ernest, basically. They are enchanted and they stop you thinking. They are drugs. Um, and, you know, if you listen to music or you compose poetry, you cannot be a rational philosopher because your mind is taken over by something which has an internal logic and force in it, which excludes. You can't, in the middle of listening to music, think about anything else. And so it's dangerous, as Plato thought and as Ernest thought.